What's going on YouTube? Hope you're doing well. This is going to be a build video and a long-term unsponsored review of what I believe is the best FPV drone you can build right now. Let me preface this by saying that my definition of best for this video is all around excellence. I'm talking freestyle, I'm talking cinewhoop, I'm talking squeezing this thing into a mid to, it's not really long range, but a longer range roll. Is this going to have the full-size action camera carrying power of a 3.5 or 5 inch? Nope. Is it going to be as good at freestyle as a 5 inch? Can you bash it around like a tiny whoop inside? No to all of those things. But if you're going for backyard freestyle, potentially using it as a cinewhoop, flying longer range flights, maybe bando bashing, I mean, this thing has pretty much all the bases covered. It's light enough, it's sub 250. I feel like this is one of the most versatile setups you can use right now. And I'm not talking specifically about these brands. This is, like I said, not sponsored. There are plenty of frames that would squeeze into this roll. And there are quite a few flight controller manufacturers, motors, video systems. I'm going by DJI because I feel like that's the standard for image quality, and that's part of what makes this drone so well-rounded. But you could definitely build an HD0 analog, walk-snail, whatever you want. In fact, I'm going to be doing an analog build of this particular frame, so let me know if you'd be interested in seeing that in an upcoming video. The point overall is that this size and form factor is super versatile. I think it's a great size for a beginner because you can fly it in a park. It's going to be a little big for a backyard flyer if you're just starting, but if you're pretty experienced, this would be a really good size for like aggressive flying in the backyard. If you shift this to like a 3 or 3.5 inch, you're going to lose a lot of the comfortability. Freestyling in the backyard or flying smoothly indoors will be just that extra bit risky. And if you go down to 2 inch, you're not going to be carrying naked GoPros well. I know it's possible, but it won't be well. And even the O4 Pro, I don't think you'll be flying well enough to carry, or I don't think you'll be flying well enough with the O4 Pro to freestyle well. So you get the idea. This size and form factor are really solid for do-it-all flying. And without further ado, let's get into the build video. The parts I used on my first build of this quad were the Jin F25 frame, split, not SP, the T-Motor F7 Mini HD stack, the O3 Air Unit, and 1404 2900 kV motors, also from T-Motor. For this new build, I moved to the DJI O4 and the SP frame from Quadmilla, which has some different parts that I'll go over in a minute, and the Flywoo Goku 745 all-in-one. Since the video is not sponsored, I should mention some comparable frames. The Avian RC Icon 2 Sub 250 Oasis Fly and Armatan Tadpole come to mind. I have a 5 inch frame from Armatan, and I'm super happy with their lifetime warranty and build quality. With that being said, Quadmilla makes some of the best frames, and they integrate very well with the O3 and the O4. They also tend to think of little things like how to mount your O4, where to put your capacitor, how to run your wires, stuff like that. I wanted to make this a detailed build video, but my O4 got stuck in the mail for weeks, because USPS sucks. There are plenty of step-by-step videos out there already. Murderer's FPV has 2 great ones, and I copied his first build on the Jin as my first DIY drone. There are some changes to the Jin F25 split from the old version. First, the arm shape and the way it locks into the key plate in the middle is different. Second, the length is different on the frames. Both it's front to back different, and the arms are slightly farther front to back as well on the newer one. Which means if you want to use prop guards on the older frame, you'll need to mount one below the carbon fiber of the arm and one above the carbon fiber sandwiched between the motor. That being said, you can still use prop guards on both, and I've got them for $3 on AliExpress. I think they're for one of GepRC's 2.5 inch drones. In my opinion, this drone is much better with an all-in-one. I had some issues where my stack screws would brush against the battery strap when I used the the mini stack from T-Motor, separate FC and ESC. And those M2 screws, by the way, that Quadmilla includes in there, will fit most stacks that are 20 by 20. But it'll be close. And they give you some silicone tubing to put around those screws if you have an M3 stack to mount. I really like this AIO so far. I'm a little OCD sometimes, and I really enjoyed being able to run the wires around the standoffs and pass them through the holes in the stack and solder them. Made for a lot cleaner build, and I have a lot more space in there. I even trimmed down the stack screws, as you can see here. I just cut them off and ruined a pair of wire cutters doing it, but I cut off the stack screws so my battery strap will not be rubbing. Okay, let's get to some weight. 171 grams with no batteries. With this 380 milliamp from G&B, it's 231. If you use a 660 milliamp from G&B, you're going to get to, I believe, 268. And if you want to be sub 250 with the light battery and the ducts, you can still be sub 250. Keep in mind, the newer version with the O4 and the newer frame is slightly lighter overall than the old version. But slightly. I believe it's like 5 grams or so, I'm not sure. Okay, let's get to some flight clips here. This first one is with the prop guards on and with the larger batteries. This thing flies, it's really easy to control, it flies well. This is an inside flight, obviously. And there's no stabilization on here, and I believe this is in 16:9, not cropped 4:3. As you can see, there are the tips of the prop guards in view. So that's something to keep in mind. That will be cropped out quite easily with stabilization, but if you turn really sharp right or left, it may come back into view. So it might be worth shaving down the little rim on the edge of those prop guards there if you want to make sure they're not in view. With that large battery, you'll get about, I get about 6 to 8 minutes of flight time, depending if I'm just cruising or freestyling. This next clip is 4:3 1080 with the O4 Air Unit. These first two have been with the O4 Pro. As you can see, the quality is quite low on this 1080p, and honestly, I think that's a big loss from the O3 with the 2.7K mode at 100 FPS in 4:3. So I'm pretty disappointed with the loss of that mode, which is one of the reasons why I don't think, if you already have an O3 and you want to build something like this, I don't know that O4 is totally necessary unless you're going to be using the 60 frames per second 4K to get cinematic footage a lot. But that being said, the transmission is very good. The latency feels really low to me. I'm not sure if there's a difference, I forget, but it feels much lower on the O4 for some reason. 4:3 is definitely better for trips like the trippy spin you saw me do there. And we're going to get another freestyle clip. These are both with the 3 bladed props, 2.5 pitch from HQ Prop, and with the small 380 milliamp 6S battery. With that setup, I get about 3.5 minutes of flight time if I'm flying aggressively, maybe 4 if I'm cruising. In hindsight, I probably would have gone with a 530 or 450 milliamp 6S just to get a little more flight time, although, you know, the performance really is exceptional with this small battery, and you definitely would miss out on a little bit of that if you go up in weight, but I don't think it would be significant. Alright, now we're getting to this next clip here. This is the 16:9 clip. This is the same day with the same setup. And as you can see, this thing has a lot of punch out. I think there'll be some bigger punch outs later in this clip. But it's very capable for freestyle. It's very agile, so it's a little different style than 5-inch. It's probably not quite as smooth, but you have all the power you need. You have a lot of yaw authority too, for how much thrust you're making, which is pretty interesting. And it has some fling. I mean, obviously it's not the same as a 5-inch, but it's not, you know, you can really throw this thing. You just have to stay on the throttle a little longer, versus with some micros, you really don't have any throw at all. You just hold the throttle if you want to continue to travel in a certain direction. This is not my best flying, but I hope this kind of illustrates the capabilities of this quad. And you know, if you get this thing set up right and you make sure the camera isn't protruding, I'll talk about that more later. I think it can be quite good for freestyle and possibly even bando bashing. I've never broken an arm on this thing, so for me, durability has been very good. I'll go over some of the weak spots in the frame later, if you want to reinforce those or just have them in mind. But as we're getting to the end of this clip here, I'll start talking about the next flight. This next flight is actually with the O3 instead of the O4, so this is my first build of this quad. And I really wanted to do a Rocksteady or Gyroflow flight with the O4, and I did, but I believe one of my wires was touching the O4, because I think my ESC was already at 48 kilohertz. So for some reason I had issues with stabilization. Anyway, I got that fixed. It works well now, but it's ugly outside right now. So I found this flight from my O3. I'll link the full video. But this is with an ND8, 60 frames per second, 4K, and using gyroflow. And I mean, another reason I wanted to include this flight is, I mean, to me this looks really good, this footage. And that's O3. So I don't feel like you have to upgrade to O4. Perhaps if you're buying a new setup anyway, you might buy the O4 over the O3. Maybe it's worth the price difference there, but you know, I really don't think you need to upgrade to the O4, especially if you have the goggles too, like I do. I don't think it's worth it. As I said, you lose out on that 2.7K mode I was talking about earlier, and you know, with the O3 you keep the 2.7K. So you know, unless they add that in later, I think that's a big loss if you're going for freestyle. So then again, if you fly in 16:9, that won't be an issue. But as you can see here, you can do some pretty... I didn't raise my camera angle too much for this. I usually run about 15 to 25 degrees, usually closer to 15. I don't think I increased it much for this, and as you can see, you can get some nice footage. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, so 6 to 8 minute flight time with the 4-bladed props and this larger 660 milliamp battery. And then the shorter flight time, the 330 with the freestyle setup I mentioned earlier. And overall, there's the flight footage. All right, so now that we're finished up with that flight footage, let's go over some of the durability and kind of how this thing is held up long term. So I've never broken an arm. I've never completely delaminated anything. But there are some weak spots, and those are right here and right here. And you can see on this new version of the frame, they've doubled up the carbon here to try and reinforce it. And here, I feel like, depending on the 3D prints you use, you will be able to reinforce that. I'm going to go ahead and break out the old frame that I'm going to be building into an analog version right here and show you how that looks after some wear and tear. So as you can see, I've shaved it down and super glued it to reinforce it. And that's held up well. I have taken head-on collisions. And that's the thing is, you know, there were some other reviewers out there, I'm going to be honest, I completely forgot the name, that were saying that the camera was way too exposed on this new version. And I agree with that to some degree. If you have your camera angle too high, that's going to be an issue. If you run a really high camera angle, we're talking like 30 degrees, maybe 25. I think 25 you'd probably still be okay though. As you can see, this protects you from head-on collisions, and you shouldn't hit your camera, like I said, depending on your angle. You shouldn't hit your camera the way I have it set up here. I don't if I run head-on into something. The only thing would be a really narrow pole if you're flying at just the right angle. But I do see the point, and I think Quadmula really missed the mark here. I think they were a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say lazy, but I think the way they've adapted their frame that was so perfectly designed to hold O3 and still be pretty durable while keeping props out of view, I think they missed the mark a little bit on this new one. So let's show one more area. Here's that back area here. As you can see, I've also filed this down and put some super glue on it because that was another kind of problem area. But other than that, I mean, this thing is just too small to really break arms ever. And I think your top plate or bottom plate will go first. And I've crashed this thing quite a bit, and mine are fine. Now, some of the cons I did want to cover as well in the end. The battery strap that Quadmula includes, it's not the most durable one. As far as cons go, that's a really minor thing. And this is a really grippy strap, so that's a good thing, but it does not hold up that well. The battery pad sits further back than I'd like. If you're gonna mount it so that these holes line up with the top plate, your battery is gonna be shifted towards the center or even a little towards the rear, depending how you set this up. And that's fine, but given that this is kind of a tail heavy quad, I would prefer, you know, an easy way to move it forward and have it still be on there super securely. Another con would be that Quadmula, I think is how you say it, is based in Taiwan, and shipping can be a pain for sure. You know, this Quadmilla shipping is slower than AliExpress. So if you've ever bought from AliExpress, that can sometimes take a while, but usually they're pretty fast. Quadmilla shipping is slower, but it's more reliable, I'd say, overall. It's quite reliable, but not fast for sure. And they do have some proprietary parts. So these spacers there's a tapered screw that passes through these spacers. They give you the specs. I'm sure you can order some of them, but a lot of them are really hard to find unless you're going through Quadmilla. So if you just want to buy some generic screws, I don't know how easily you'll be able to repair your frame without ordering from Quadmilla. So that's just something to keep in mind. Those are the biggest cons for me, but like I said, overall, I think this is one of the best platforms you can use. If, let's say you're traveling, even if you're an experienced FPV pilot, let's say you're traveling. This is like the perfect size. I can put the ducks on there. I can record. I could bring a naked GoPro if I were into cinematics, or into cinematic shots, but I really don't need one with the O4. And I can freestyle it too and not really worry too much about durability. The parts are small. I can throw an extra motor and arm in the bag, and I probably won't ever need them. So that's the beauty of it. I think if you can figure out a way to protect your O4 in this new version, I would highly recommend it. And the O3 version, I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think it was covered really well. Quadmilla has lots of extras. One other thing I should add before closing off this video is that these 3D prints I like my little alternating colors of TPU here. But these 3D prints are available from Quadmilla. The only one that's not is one that I remixed, and that's this right here. I remixed this thing right here and another O4 antenna mount that I found on Thingiverse, I think it was. So if you need any STLs, let me know. I can send some stuff. But yeah, I think that about does it. Thanks for watching.